You're listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk.
Number 366.
Hello and welcome back to the first podcast of 2014. I hope you've all had a reasonable Christmas break. It's already a distant memory. It's only a couple of weeks ago. And Christmas Day for Rose, I and Beth involved driving from a wet and windy, miserable Malvern over to Hay Bluff, which is the mountain range, hill range, just above Hay on Wye. And we took with us our new office manager, our pup called Pip. Try doing that without popping the microphone. And Pip discovered for the first time what snow is like, as when we got to the top of Hay Bluff, we were knee-deep in glorious snow, actually. It was one of those lovely days where it was very, very fresh, bitter wind, and a lovely blue sky with a bit of sunshine. But as the weather came in, we headed back and, of course, sat down for a lovely slap-up turkey supper. Now, this time of year, of course, we are all doing resolutions and making plans, most of which are probably forgotten by now. But as we work into 2014, we are obviously talking about things we hope to be doing with the outdoor station and, of course, with our little shop backpacking light. One of which is we're thinking of putting on a small lightweight show in spring at our base in Malvern. Now, it's early days yet, and we've sort of cast the net out with various suppliers who are very interested in coming and meeting our customer base, but of course the details will be appearing on the backpackinglight.co.uk website in due course as the weeks unfold. Now, as I record this, it is the end of the first working week in January 2014. And, of course, typical of the British weather, it is cold. Not too cold, actually, but it is cold. But more importantly, it is wet. We're being hammered by various storms coming in from America across the pond, and it's certainly causing a lot of damage and devastation along the way. Once again, Worcestershire is virtually underwater. We're international news, and our local villages and towns of Upton and Tewkesbury have all made the national news. And the poor people that got washed out a couple of years ago are once again complaining, and understandably so, that nothing has been done. And once again, they've had a pretty lousy Christmas underwater, which is a great shame. But you might be listening to this somewhere where it is cold and you're snuggled down underneath your duvet, or you're inside a tent somewhere in your sleeping bag. Maybe you're sitting in a snow hole wrapped up in your nice warm duvet jacket, or in a bivvy bag as you listen to this. Of course, keeping warm is the main objective in any of those situations, particularly as the weather starts howling and blowing around you. And you could be using any one of numerous various down-filled products. Now, I wonder if you've ever given any consideration to where the down actually comes from. The ethics of your down insulation gathering, maybe the availability of it, because just over 12 months ago, it was all the news. Bird flu everywhere, coming across Europe, devastating, and it's all gone very, very quiet. Now, I wonder what effect that has had on the amount and availability of down. And of course, in the outdoors media generally, on Outdoors Magic, various websites, and in the magazine, people are starting to discuss and talk about hydrophobic down and the hydrophobic treatment. And of course, the bottom line is on all this, how is it going to affect functionality and the bottom line, the price? So we thought it was time to seek advice from somebody who deals with this product on a daily basis. Ben Mainwaring is a product designer for a lot of the insulated equipment for that well-known brand Rab, a company that uses a lot of down and have done so very successfully for many years. So who better to ask about the practicalities of down and what 2014 and beyond holds for this insulation?
So technically, down is a type of feather. Although we do make technical differences between feather and down. Technically, down is a type of feather, and what it is, it's the closest layer of feathers to a bird's skin. So on the outside you have your protective feathers, which are larger and coarser, and these are to give sort of wind and water resistance to your waterfowl like geese and duck. And then inside of that you have your lighter down feathers, which provide the warmth and the insulation for the bird. So these are very fine feathers, and they've got a three-dimensional structure which traps air and traps warmth against the bird's skin. So these are why they're such a great insulator. Your cold weather birds, they rely on this to sort of stay alive over the winter months.
Historically, when you're looking at products, you see that there's different values of down, the 650, 850, 900 fill and whatever. So how is that calculated, and what's the technical specifications behind it?
Okay, well, fill power people get confused between fill power and fill weight. Fill power is a measure of the quality of the down. And what that refers to is the volume in cubic inches of which 1 ounce of down takes up. So what 1 ounce is roughly 30 grams, and the fill power is how much that down lofts and how much volume it takes up. This is typically measured in what's called a Lorch machine, and the down is basically put into the bottom of like a perspex cylinder, and a set weight is placed on top of the down. The down is left for a set amount of time to loft on its own, and then the height of the loft is measured off the side of the cylinder, and from this they can work out the volume of loft which the down is taking up. So the higher this number, the higher this fill power number, the higher the quality of the down. So you're looking at your two species of down. You have your goose down and your duck down, and duck down typically varies in quality from 550 cubic inches of fill power up to 700, and then your goose down usually varies from maybe 700 up to a maximum of 900 or 950 if you're very lucky. Although 950 is difficult to consistently get hold of because it's at the top end of the quality. There's less of the birds around which are going to produce this top quality. So that's a brief explanation of fill power. So the higher the fill power number, the higher the quality of the down. So go on.
I understand that where the down is harvested, which the birds which are in the colder climates are also a better quality down that comes from there, because obviously they need the down during the Siberia and winters and that sort of thing.
Yeah. The best down is sourced from birds which live in cold environments. So looking at Eastern Europe, we primarily get our down from Poland, Russia, the Ukraine, and a little bit from Germany as well. And the birds which live in these cold environments, they develop a thick and mature layer of down to keep them warm. Whereas birds which live in warmer environments, they don't need this warm layer of down to keep them warm, so they typically have poorer quality of down. So the down which we find is the best quality is coming from Eastern Europe.
So to take us through the story then, the journey, if you like, that down takes from the bird to your products, the sleeping bags or the jackets and so on. Presumably you're harvesting the down from birds which are being killed for their meat. Yes, yeah. I mean, a majority of the value of a bird is its meat. Typically the down is only worth 5 or 10% of the value of the bird. So, 90% or 95% of the bird's worth is its meat. So, depending where they come from, the Chinese, they like to eat a younger bird, so you end up with smaller down clusters and less quality down coming from China. Whereas in Europe, people like to have the bird fatter and larger, so typically the bird lives a bit longer. So you're getting a more mature down feather that comes from the end product. And so, as I say, take us through the journey then of how it's collected and how long it takes to get from the bird to you.
The birds start off in the farms in sort of Poland or Ukraine or wherever. Then they move on to the slaughterhouse, which the slaughterhouse will work with a number of farms. So at each part of the process, you're getting less and less number of inputs. You have lots and lots of farms, going to maybe a central slaughterhouse or a number of slaughterhouses. From there, the birds are killed for their meat, and the down is stripped off of the dead birds. The feathers then move from the slaughterhouses to a down processing plant. The down is shipped in tight bundles, so that it's compact and easy to ship. And then when the processor gets it, they wash the down, they get rid of any dust, they sterilise it, and then they sort the down. They mix the downs and sort them into the fill powers, which end up in the sleeping bags. So, you don't have 500 fill power geese and 700 fill power geese. You get a variety of qualities of feather from each goose.
I presume this is all done manually, is it? Somebody by hand is sitting there, separating the feathers off?
No, we have a machine which blows the down up into the air, and the down travels over several walls. So obviously if you blow the down from underneath, the lightest down goes higher because they're all blown with the same amount of force. So the lightest down floats to the top and the heavier down floats down. So the lighter down floats over a wall and into the next chamber, and then is blown with more air, and the lighter down floats over a wall into the next chamber. So after a number of chambers, you end up with the highest quality down being in the final chamber. And then as you work back through the chambers, you get lower and lower quality down, which comes out the bottom of each separate chamber. So it's all sorted by quite simply by the use of air.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realise that. So then it's gathered and it's now cleaned and it's sterilised and obviously put into its grading. And is that the final process before it gets shipped to you?
Yeah, pretty much. The final process is the separation of the down into the different qualities. Yeah.
And then when it arrives to the Rab headquarters, then you have shells made up with the sleeping bags and the jackets and so on. And how is the down put into the shells? Is it done manually or done through a sort of a pump system or what?
We have a variety of different systems that we use here. Some pieces are filled by hand, pieces that have sort of smaller chambers or smaller areas to get down into. And then other chambers are filled. We have a set of blowing machines that blow the down into the chambers. And the advantage of this is it allows us to weigh the down really accurately and make sure that each chamber is accurately filled sort of down to 1 gram precision. It speeds up the process, but it also gives us this improved accuracy that we couldn't previously get when we filled by hand.
And yeah, it must have been quite a sneezy job to be on the shop floor filling these things with the little feathers floating around all the time. Yeah,
I mean, in times gone by, I'd never visited the old Rab factory, but there's feathers. Apparently, there's feathers everywhere. I used to billow out the doors.
Yeah.
So we've kind of managed to control that a bit better now.
Since 2005, over 5 million people have listened to the Outdoors Station audio podcasts, and over 1 million have watched the videos. You can subscribe to the Outdoors Station in numerous ways. Visit the website and select the link to your chosen social media network.
So that's the journey of the down then as it goes through to you. Now I know certainly I think everybody's fairly aware of the sort of the ethics and a lot of the pressure groups that are bringing this to the fore in the outdoors world, in the sense that how the down is collected and when it is collected. Can you tell us a bit about sort of some of the politics and some of the things going on at the moment that you're aware of, not necessarily affecting you, but you're aware of?
I mean, there's obviously pressure groups are putting a lot of pressure on against live plucking, and also the production of foie gras from the goose industry. I would have thought majority of brands now are not using live pluck down or ever were. It's not something new. But it just seems to have come to the forefront recently. We've all been aware of live pluck down and things for a long time and have all been avoiding it for, a long period of time. But it's only recently that we're sort of getting pressure groups that are highlighting this. But, it's not something new to us. We have known about it. I mean, all we can say is that our down processor is a European supplier. We're using our down is from European sources like Poland and the Ukraine, who are typically ethically sort of more aware than some of the Asian counterparts. Our down processor is audited by the EDFA, which is the European Down and Feather Association, and they have quite sort of tough criteria on traceability and animal welfare. And then at the other end of it, every batch of our down is then sent to the IDFL, which is the International Down and Feather Laboratory, who do independent fill power and quality testing. So we're kind of, quite confident that our down has been ethically sourced and also matching up to the quality that we're buying.
So traceability obviously has been a very important part to you, and I think you should be congratulated for that. As you say, there are presumably numerous down sources from around the world which are nowhere near as sort of covered as well for legislation. But this legislation you're talking about, the Down Association, is that a voluntary thing then that people have got involved in and set up to ensure the quality is kept at the same level, or is it sort of a legal pressure, a legal obligation that you have to take part in?
That I'm not sure of. That I'm not sure of. I think it's probably voluntary. I don't think it is a legal requirement yet. But it can only help, as a down processor, it can only help your sort of openness and your trustability if you can show that you do have this EDFA certificate and that all your paperwork is in order and all of your sources are ethical. And then you're matching up to requirements that they list. It can only help the down processor really, and it's up to us as an industry to choose down processors and suppliers which match up to these certifications and can be trusted. Yeah,
no, that's very true. When I was at Friedrichshafen 2 years ago, 2012, I went to a talk, and this was becoming very, very big news. And obviously, the impact it was having on the industry, that you've got to make sure you've got traceability on your ethically sourced products.
Because of the nature of down and the fact that it is, as I've already said, when it gets to the processors, it's mixed with lots of other downs. So you have a combination of downs which are then sorted to end up with your final fill powers. So it's not like you could trace which goose your down came from, or even it's been very difficult to even trace which farms it came from because the nature of how the downs are all mixed with one another. But as long as you know your downs are all coming from the same region or the same group of farms, I think that's about as far as you can go at this moment in time. And with the tracing, it's very difficult to trace batches or down to an individual bird like people are attempting to do with merino.
Yes, I can understand that. And presumably, I mean, over the last, 12, 18 months, we've had bird flu that came through Europe, and although it's sort of gone very quiet for us here, I'm guessing that's affected, the amount of down you've managed to get your hands on.
Well, there's lots of things that are affecting the amount of down available at the moment, and that has put the down prices up incredibly. Down is a finite resource, and the price of it fluctuates with the demand. It's just a commodity, just like oil or petrol or whatever. There is only so much down available, and if you get a large brand like Nike or a fashion brand that decides they want to start using down, and all of a sudden, they might start using thousands of tons of down, and that's down that's not available to us, and then that's down that's not available to anybody else, and it puts the price of down up. And then the prices then go. It's unsustainable for us to carry on keeping the prices, and we have to pass those prices on to the retailer and the consumer at some point. And it only seems to be on the up, which is a bit of a shame. But also, something else that affects this is as the population of the world gets more affluent, there's a trend towards eating red meat. So this decreases the market for duck and geese, and reduces the amount of the birds culled because, as I said before, 90% of the worth of the bird is the meat. So if people stop eating geese and duck, or less people are eating geese and duck, then it makes no sense for farmers to be breeding geese and duck just for the down. They need the market value to be from the meat of the bird. So therefore, if the market for the meat's not there, then they'll also decrease the sort of amount of birds available for the feathers.
Well, that does put a lot of pressure on, and certainly, as you say, price-wise, I noticed that 2014 prices that have been released now, there's been quite a considerable increase in all down-related products.
Yeah, we've seen. I mean, we will have seen more price rises than the retailers or consumers, because we try and swallow some of it up ourselves. But yeah, down prices have increased hugely over the past year.
Now, I know there's been a recent development with hydrophobic down, because, I presume most listeners will realise, obviously, that down is an exceedingly good insulator, but when it gets wet, it's obviously not particularly useful. However, hydrophobic down, I presume, is something that's been introduced into the process.
Yeah. I mean, going back to your first point about, Down's a great insulator, and it's naturally breathable, and it naturally absorbs and wicks moisture. But the downside of that is if it absorbs too much moisture and the down gets overloaded with moisture, it then reduces its ability to trap air and to provide warmth. So excuse the pun, but sort of, the downside of down has always been its inability to deal with too much water. This doesn't mean that as soon as your down jacket sees water, it's going to collapse. It does actually resist water quite well, more than people think. But to just help it along, we've introduced hydrophobic down to try and just make the down a bit more resilient to moisture and water. To do this, we've partnered with Nikwax, who are they've got a long history in water-resistant technologies. And also they have a strong background in non-fluorocarbon water-resistant treatments, which in the current climate is also very important. Now, the hydrophobic treatment has to be thought of as a DWR, so the down doesn't become waterproof, it just becomes water-resistant. And the same, you have to think the same thing about your jackets. Because we've added a hydrophobic to the down, it doesn't suddenly make your jacket or your sleeping bag a waterproof item. The water can still enter the garments or the sleeping bag through the stitching, and also if there's non-waterproof fabrics, the water can still get through them. So what we're trying to do here is minimise the take-up of water by the down itself. The other components of the design or the garment can still let water through. So what we do is we're adding our hydrophobic system during the down processing. So when I mentioned before, we've got the down processing plant where the down is cleaned and sterilised, but we're adding the hydrophobic treatment at this point in the life cycle of the down. So, I mean, we get questions about, can I just add Nikwax to the end product and will I get the same result? And no, you'll never achieve the same level of water resistancy as we are by adding it during the processing stage. If you add waterproofing to the final product, it has a very difficult job getting past the outer fabric of the product and into the down itself. So all you'll do is make the outer of your waterproof jacket or the outer of your down jacket, you'll just make it more waterproof, and not very little of that will actually get through to the down itself.
You're listening to The Outdoor Station, the home of UK-based audio and video podcasts for lovers of the great outdoors everywhere.
Well, two questions that instantly come to mind. First of all, is there a way of describing or measuring the water resistancy from the Nikwax-based down compared to the normal, if you like, untreated down? Is there a way of saying it absorbs, the untreated absorbs X amount percentage-wise more moisture?
Yeah, it's at least, basically it's the other way around. The hydrophobic decreases water uptake by at least 50%.
Okay.
So which then means because there's not as much water in it, it maintains its loft for longer, and also it's faster drying. You've not got as much water to get rid of. So once the water gets in there, it dries out faster as well.
Presumably your material that's either side of the down that's holding the down together, that'll still get wet, and that will still take its appropriate time to dry out.
Yes, it will, yeah. But a majority of the fabrics we use in combination with down will either have a DWR or a Pertex Endurance coating on. So we already try and protect the down somewhat before the water even gets the hydrophobic down. We're trying to protect it a little.
And the second question is treated down as opposed to untreated down. Does it have the same fill power? Does it have the same insulation characteristics, or do you have to use slightly more of it because it's DWR treated?
No, and it does have exactly the same fill power as the untreated down, and that's something that we have to be really careful of in development. You've got to find that sweet spot between adding too much hydrophobic mixture and not enough. So we need the down to be hydrophobic and to reduce sort of moisture retention. But at the same time, we can't afford to lose the fill power. So that's taken us quite a while to get that dialed in correctly. And the down, at the end of the day, the down still is sent to the same laboratory, the test laboratory, as the regular down. So we still have the certificates with our official fill power on. So our down still has to meet that criteria, whether it's hydrophobic or not.
So is there any difference then between the, should we say, the DWR treated down product and the traditional product on how you should look after your jacket or sleeping bag? Is the cleaning routine and the management of the product to give it its maximum lifespan, especially if it's going to be an expensive product, is it exactly the same?
With the hydrophobic products, we do recommend using the Nikwax aftercare products. So we do recommend washing in the down wash, Nikwax down wash, and then after a few washes, if you feel that it's losing its, it should be say more than a few washes. We're certifying it for at least 10 washes. The hydrophobic down. So if after this time you feel that the hydrophobic down is starting to sort of lose its water repellency, then you can reproof it in the Nikwax down proof. So just to recap, we recommend washing in Nikwax down wash, and if after a length of time you feel that it's losing any performance, you can use Nikwax down proof to reproof.
And I think probably most people listening to this would want to know the actual definitive answer to the question, which is how often should you and when should you clean a down jacket or bag? Is there sort of certain characteristics that appear that make it obvious that it needs to be cleaned? It varies person to person. We do see some, we do wash a lot of jackets here, and we do see some incredibly manky jackets that people seem to have maybe had 10 years and never washed them, and then they send them back to us and we have to sort them out. It depends entirely how much you wear your jacket or sleeping bag. Myself, I'd wash my jacket maybe once a year because I only wear down when it's really cold. So maybe only 3 or 4 months a year I'm actually using my down equipment. As for sleeping bags, again, it depends entirely how much you use them. We always recommend using a silk sleeping bag liner to keep the inside of your sleeping bag clean and stop it smelling. But you can gradually, you can essentially tell by if it starts to lose its loft, starts to feel a little bit manky, and it could probably do with a wash. It could probably do with a wash and a spruce back up. Do you find that the sleeping bags, for example, suffer more damage from body moistures and dirt and whatever from inside the bag than actually from the outside of the bag?
Oh, definitely, yeah, certainly. Because say with the jackets, the amount of time you spend in a jacket is, you might spend a couple of hours a day in a jacket, or if you're on expedition or something, you may wear it for a longer period, but generally down jackets aren't actually worn that much, whereas a sleeping bag, if you go to sleep in it, you're then spending 8 hours in a single night in that sleeping bag, and your body perspires quite a bit at night, and it has nowhere else to go apart from through the sleeping bag. So, yeah, we generally see quite a few manky sleeping bags compared to jackets, yeah.
And is that a service that you offer then, a cleaning service for Rab products?
We clean them a lot when they come in for repairs and things. We try not to encourage it too much. We would prefer that people either clean them themselves or went to a specialised cleaner. But if things come in for repair, we do clean them before we send them back out.
Oh, right, okay. So I suppose the final question is really then, if you spent, your sort of, £300, £400, £500, I suppose, it can be on jackets or sleeping bags, and you look after it from sort of an average user's point of view, you might go out half a dozen times a year, perhaps in your sleeping bag, and as you say, you wear your jacket sort of 2-3 months of the year. How long should that product? What's the lifespan? How long should it last?
Yeah, you quite easily get 10 years out of, with moderate use, you should probably get a good 10 years out of a sleeping bag or a jacket. But our repairs department, we quite often get things back which are 15, 20 years old and they're still in regular use. People, once they've got an expensive bag, an expensive jacket, they seem to sort of fall in love with it and hang on to it. And we get very old products back for repairs, and people don't want them thrown away, they just want a patch sewn on and they want to carry on using it.
I mean, I presume if you do look after your product, as you say, apart from the external materials that sort of naturally get damaged, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that a down product could actually last for, 20, 30 years or so, subject to the outer material not letting the down weep out.
Yeah, I mean, the down itself degrades very slowly, so the down doesn't lose much performance at all. It's more down to rips and tears in the outer products, and also sort of UV damage from extended time outside, which damages the outer fabrics. So there's much more abuse to the outer fabrics than to the down itself, and it can last a lifetime. Yeah.
Well, as you're a product designer, obviously, for Rab, and as always, no doubt you're probably working for 2015 at the moment on designs.
Yeah, summer 15 we're working on right now.
Summer 15, blimey, we're just finishing the end of 2013. That's why it takes so long to get these products through, folks, when you listen to this. It takes a good 2 years. But is there any development in the down scene, in the insulation scene that you see that's coming through that's starting to raise your interest?
We've got the Polartec Alpha story coming through in a few products, which is kind of a new take on insulation, that it's very good for sort of movement and athletic kind of insulation rather than the static insulation we've been used to from the likes of Primaloft. And then there's kind of lots of blended downs coming through, which are sort of downs blended with synthetic insulation and things like that, which are quite interesting. But I think the hydrophobic story kind of gets rid of a lot of the downsides of down and makes the blended insulations a little bit I don't know. I'm not convinced on those yet.
Right. I suppose it's the proof of the pudding comes through making samples up and doing continual testing.
Yeah. I mean, we always, any new technology that comes along, we try and get a sample made and get it out to one of our athletes for feedback.
To conclude then, if what you were saying earlier on is true, that there are more red meat eaters in the world and less people sort of choosing to eat duck and geese, do you see it? This decrease in production actually is a steady decline?
I would hope not. I would hope that the fashion world may move away from down again. That'd help us out in a big way. It'd free up a lot of down. But also the other big factor is as China becomes more of a consumer, they're also buying more down bedding and things like that, which is also consuming a lot of down. So we'll have to see what happens. Hopefully we can stabilise the price and it won't get passed on so much to the consumers and the retailers, and we'll have to see where it goes from here.
Well, obviously, I think the message needs to go out to everybody that as it's Christmas time to start thinking more Victorian and book a goose for Christmas rather than a turkey.
I think so. That could help us out, yeah.
and think of all you're helping the outdoor industry. Well, Ben, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to discuss this through with us and touch on a few areas which I hope add some clarification to people.
Okay, yeah, not a problem at all, Bob.
If you're sitting in your down jacket as you listen to this, I wonder if that's given you plenty of thought. My thanks to Ben once again from Rab for taking the time to join us and for sharing more background information about down in general, how it's gathered and how it's sorted. Now, on the video front, Andy Howell and I are currently working on a project to produce an introduction to walking in the Pyrenees, something I think will be of interest to a lot of people. Certainly, Andy was saying that's one of his biggest series of questions that he gets over the winter period as people start to plan their summer and spring walks. So we're hoping to put together some information clips, video clips, maps and so on in general, and do a conversation, but this time on video rather than the audio, so people can see what's involved, perhaps doing initial tentative trips over to the Pyrenees before they do a much longer one. Certainly the sort of thing I'd definitely be interested in doing with Rose. And that video should be completed towards the end of January, all being well. So until next time, folks, I shall leave you with this thought: all of those who wander are not necessarily lost. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear more from our extensive free library, please visit the website at theoutdoorstation.co.uk, the home of UK-based audio and video podcasts for outdoors people everywhere.